there everybody, how's it going? Nice to see you again. What an absolutely glorious day. It's about 52 degrees out and no wind, bright blue skies. Not the greatest light, but in the shade it's nice. And we have 7 tips with 2 bonus tips. And I'm gonna start off right away with a bonus tip. Find a place that's close, local to where you live, that you can go in you can access in various weather conditions to make videos, hone your craft, test gear. Preferably it's the kind of stuff you want to shoot. Now I understand if you live in a city, okay, like, you know, New York or Chicago. In New York, maybe you go to Central Park kind of a thing and you want to do landscape photography. I mean, that's my point. That's where I'm coming from. I'm a landscape photographer. Then it might be a little bit more difficult to get like green things and trees and wild. There's got to be a park close to you somewhere. If you're keen on landscape photography, find yourself a park or a wooded area or a more wild area where you live that you can go on a regular basis to, like I said, to test stuff, hone your craft, just get out and enjoy nature, which is always a good thing, even if you're not photographing. You get the point, okay? Very important. I'm very blessed in the sense that, you know, I've got the Eagle Cap Wilderness 10 miles from where I live, which is a wonderful thing. It's not always accessible though, although the lower lying areas are in the wintertime. They keep the roads plowed, etc. So that's why you keep seeing videos from my, I would call this my local forest. And I've said it before, I don't call it a woodland because these are all pointy straight trees. They're not, you know, those really cool, and don't get me wrong, the pointy straight trees are really cool too, but it's more of a forest. Not so much the squiggly beach forests, beach woodlands that, like Ian Worth, for example, seems to go to all the time, which I would too if I lived, I think he lives in Wales. So very cool. So that's bonus tip number 1 to start off the video. But again, let's go back to what a glorious day. For the past week, I've been itching to get out of the house and make a video. And it's been blowing 35, 40 miles an hour steady with like gusts to 50 or 60 for the past week. The wind has died down today and it has been like 30 degrees, which is what, -1 Celsius. And today it's 52 degrees, which I think is 20 degrees Celsius. As you can tell, don't need gloves, which is a wonderful thing. My hands aren't freezing. I switched back to the more temperate hat, etc., etc. No jacket really. Fantastic weather. But tomorrow it's all going to change. We got some snow coming in, back to the 30 degrees. Hopefully that wind cools it for a while. So there you go. Let's scout it out. I've seen some things to photograph also. So that's always an exciting thing too. Let's go photograph something and then we'll start off for real. We'll start off for real with our 7 tips. I would call these intermediate tips. They're not really beginner tips, although they're good if you're a beginner photographer to familiarize yourself with these ideas. But if you know, if you've already got your camera and you've been out there taking some pictures, these are some great things to keep in mind. These are the kind of things where after 30 plus years of doing this, I don't really vocalize them in my head when I should really though, but I don't really vocalize them in my head when I'm out photographing. They're just kind of part of the natural flow of what I do. So, so yeah, let's go. Nice to get back to the X-T5. I really enjoy this camera. It's a 70-300, gorgeous lens. All right, first image is f11 at a 15th of a second. And that's interesting, but like I said, the neutral density filter is probably where it's at. I'm going to throw the 4-stop on there. 4-stop got me 1.3 seconds. Interesting. It gets me a 30-second exposure. So one of the cool things about the Fujis is that in T mode, when you're doing a long exposure, it gives you a countdown timer on the back screen or in the viewfinder, depending upon what you're looking at, that tells you exactly how long you've got to go, which is really wonderful because it tells you that the camera's actually doing something and how long you have to wait for your image to be done. And so this is the final image. I settled on 13 seconds at f8, 125 ISO, and it turned out like that. So real minimalism. So that first image leads me to my first tip, and that is that great light leads to great images. So always be looking for the light. Even on a bright sunny day, the light can be great someplace. Like this light reflecting off this river is wonderful. On a really clear blue, bright sunny day, you're really looking for reflected light. So it's such an important thing to consider that it's worth saying again. Great light leads to great images. So look for great light. And great light, it's very rare that you get conditions where the light's just really awful. But it does happen. Usually with a little ingenuity and a little seeking, you can find some good light. And that's the key to making great images. So that last image that I showed you also exemplifies the two next tips, so number 2 and number 3. Simplicity is the key. Now, that image is kind of minimalism, and I get that, and that's beyond simplicity. But in any scene, what you're trying to do is simplify, separate the signal from the noise, is how an engineer put it on one of the workshops I was teaching back on Mount St. Helens like 25 years ago. And that stuck with me ever since. How do you separate the signal from the noise? That's both for composition, but it's also just in general, like check the edges of your frames, make sure there's nothing sticking in. Just make sure you try to simplify your image to tell the story or to create the composition that you want. And the third thing is that, and this is pretty evident in that photo as well, your shadows define your highlights. It's the contrast that creates the drama. Okay, Ansel Adams' Moonrise over Hernandez, which is a great image to use as a teaching tool. 2/3 of that photograph is black, but that defines the white on the crosses and the white in the moon. You can see how that image has created such a resonance with people over the years. There's more to it than just a pretty photograph. But it's the shadows in that photograph that are defining the highlight. And continuing on with the theme of Ansel Adams, he said a good photograph is knowing where to stand. And that's so important. That's why a lot of photographers you'll see on YouTube will take their camera out, they don't even put it on a tripod, and they'll take a bunch of test images, which you can do with digital. Okay, it is a luxury that digital affords because it doesn't cost you anything. You just click away, right? You can delete them later. So you can test a lot of stuff to fine-tune your composition. And so in theory, we should be getting a lot better compositions these days. I'm not so sure that that's true. It seems that we got some pretty good compositions when we couldn't do that. We had to pre-visualize, as Ansel Adams said, our photographs and then set up our cameras. Although he would move his 8x10 around once he got it set up, but it's so much more cumbersome than just click, 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 click and looking, right? So inches can make a difference. When I was up on the bridge taking that last photograph, I fine-tuned that quite a bit, just very subtle movements to get the composition finalized. And I think you can see that over the 2 or 3 images that I've shown you. So inches make a difference. A good photograph is knowing where to stand. So you know you're in Oregon when you see that. Fallen tree with moss on it. It just seems to be a very Pacific Northwest thing. On the west side of the state, where it rains a lot more, it's much more prolific. But it definitely, when I saw that just walking over here, I said to myself, definitely in Oregon. Number 5, vision and style are more important than gear, and to a certain extent, technique. When I was finishing my college degree at Portland State University 20 years ago, I had done part-time I had done 3 years to get a bachelor's in geology. So I had done chemistry and physics and calculus and math, and I did all these really hard courses. But at the end of the day, I wanted to get the degree because it was a requirement to be an airline pilot. So I went back and I went to my advisor, the advisor there, and she said, all you have to do is take electives. You just need a number of credits. You don't have to take anything specific just to get a degree. So I ended up taking Theater Appreciation 101 and 2 basic 101 photography courses. But the point that I'm trying to make is, in one of my Photography 101 classes, there was this 18-year-old freshman girl, and she was a graphics design major, and she was taking a photography class for kicks and giggles. And we would get the assignments and we'd go over them in class, and she didn't know anything about photography. Her images were fantastic. Her photos were great. I mean, she really had the eye. She had no idea what she was doing, and she had very basic gear. But you know, at the time I was taking this class, I had been a working pro for 20 years. And so I could recognize, you know, good work when I saw it. I don't know if she pursued photography or not, but and I'm sure she was a great graphic designer if that's what she ended up doing. But there's an example, specific example of where vision and style completely obliterate gear and even skill and knowledge to that extent. So I'm not saying you don't need skill and knowledge, and I'm not saying you don't need gear, because in photography you need both, but the vision and the style is so much more important, and she proved it. Now, the thing I'm not saying, which I'm going to say now, is the vision and the style is the hard part. Okay, anybody with money can buy gear, and even if you don't have that much money, you can beg, borrow, and I wouldn't steal it, but you get the idea. You can come up with some gear if you tried. You can go on the internet and get a whole bunch of knowledge, and then you can work really hard and develop your skill. But you know, don't make it to the detriment of vision and style. That's like what you should be putting your emphasis on, because those 2 things are the most important for your creativity and for the production of meaningful work to yourself and others. This is controversial, and it's something I need to remember. But number 6 is, sharpness is not a law, it's a choice. When I go out to do landscape photography, I usually, in my mind, it's default. How do I get everything sharp? Okay, F11's not doing it for me. I just did it on the bridge. I bracketed 2 shots to focus stack, okay? Because that image, I want everything sharp. But maybe I don't, right? Maybe I should have split the difference and made the foreground and the background not sharp. So now even I have to rethink this, because when I was up there taking that last photograph, I was like, this all has to be sharp. But so yeah, I fall into the trap myself. Maybe no, it doesn't, okay? And so obviously you don't want a mistake. You don't want like out of focus or blurry because of camera movement unless it's intentional, right? So yeah, but your zone of focus, do you want a shallow depth of field? And in landscape photography, it can work. But I have to remember that it's a possibility. And I fall victim to this myself. So yes, when you're first starting out, absolutely try to get everything sharp. You shouldn't not be able to get everything sharp, okay? But once you have the skill and the knowledge and the ability to get everything sharp, remember that's just a choice. And for some photographs, it's the out of focus areas that make the in focus areas seem more sharp. Something to think about. So number 7, the darkroom, either digital or wet, is just as important as the shooting. However, don't use the digital darkroom as a crutch for poor field technique. And you know, I'm not going to elaborate on that. It's very clear. Today, the problem is people are over processing the crap out of everything. Just because you can doesn't mean you should, and less is more in the digital darkroom. Now, the wet darkroom, most people aren't using it anymore, and anyone who is knows it's very self-limiting. You can't make it good enough, all right? That mountain to climb, you're never going to get to the top, right? It's a self-limiting process. The digital darkroom, you can do whatever you want, and that doesn't mean you should or at all. So the problem with the digital darkroom is knowing when to quit, all right? And okay, I said I wasn't going to elaborate, and I did, but that's what I have to say about that. But it's really important. Processing your images is important, but don't let it be a crutch for poor field technique. And bonus tip, which would be number 8, it absolutely behooves you to print your work. You spent a lot of money on your camera, and you've got all these images on your computer, and if all you're ever seeing is your images on a screen, you don't really know what your photographs look like. If you're really serious about what you're doing, get yourself some kind of a printer and send those images to paper. Do it as cheap as you can. I don't care if you use the cheapest paper, Epson, Luster, whatever. And if you don't want to spend the money on a printer, or you don't have the money for a printer, you do have a couple of bucks every once in a while to take your SD card to Walmart and print out some 8x10s. I highly recommend treat yourself. Once a month, print 5 photographs at Walmart. It'll cost you maybe 10 bucks. You spend that on a sandwich. If you're serious about your work, it'll absolutely improve what you're doing. So thanks for coming out today. I really appreciate it. 52 degrees on a end of December in Northeast Oregon day is a wonderful thing, and my hands aren't even cold. Like, subscribe, please subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and we'll see you out here. Have a great one.